there again, only $10 and then $5 for the card, which downloads those different beautiful songs. So. And next we have Brad McIntyre, and this Brad is a really special friend of Wilma's and mine, and we've known Brad for many, many years. How many years have we known you now, Brad? About 15 years. And when we first met you, and you've been living with AIDS now for 26 years, right? And when we met Brad 15 years ago, and we became good friends, and Wilma and I went to the hospital, Brad was literally on his deathbed, just skin and bones, and they were reading him those last rites and thought he was going to be making his transition. But they didn't know Brad very well, because Brad didn't make his transition. He just got stronger and stronger, and then a few years later, Denise and Brad got married in the most beautiful wedding I think Wilma and I have ever been at. They were both dressed in white, these two beautiful guys that were getting married, and the wedding ceremony was just so spectacular and beautiful and so moving. So Brad, really so honored to have you here today, and so glad that you're with us, and excited to have you. So here's Brad McIntyre.
Hi, thank you very much, Rob. I feel real fortunate to be here, especially since being diagnosed with HIV was considered incorrectly to be a death sentence. I also wanted to say, Brock, that I actually looked it up, and I actually spoke at one of your Forage for the Soul breakfast seminars 9 years ago. And for me, I've never really known how long I've had, so I've tried to live every day almost as if it was my last. And certainly there's been lots of trials along the way. I'd like to start by saying that there are 40 million people around the world infected with HIV, and 27 million have died. 10 million people don't know that they're infected with HIV. 7,000 people die every day from HIV. In Canada, every 2 hours, someone is infected with HIV. HIV doesn't discriminate, and you can't tell by looking that someone is infected. I was infected in 1984. I've been in a relationship for almost a decade, and that relationship ended. And I found myself single. And unfortunately, I was infected with HIV. In 1985, I went to see an AIDS specialist. I actually didn't want to see a doctor in the city that I lived, which was Kitchener-Waterloo, Ontario, for fear that someone would see me in the hospital and assume maybe that I was HIV positive. In those days when you were HIV positive, everything in the hospital room, was incinerated. There was a bright orange sign that said, high risk. People lost their jobs. People were kicked out of their homes, and unfortunately, even some parents disowned their children because they were HIV positive. So when I found out I was HIV positive, that was like the worst thing that could possibly happen to me. And that caused, for me to be in, a state of fear, especially when I had to go home and tell a partner that I had just moved in with 30 days prior that I was infected. Not only was I infected with HIV, but the doctor told me to arrange my finances, inform my family that I had 6 months to live. At any moment on that drive home, I could have swerved off the road and ended it all there, rather than face my partner, having to disclose what the doctor told me, and face what I perceived was going to be, my demise. And because of all of the fear associated with HIV, and Emerson says that fear defeats more people than any other thing in the world. And for me, that's exactly what happened. I shut down. And the partner that I was with decided that he couldn't handle watching me die, or watching me get sick and die. And so the relationship ended. So there I was, HIV positive, 6 months to live, alone. My only recourse, I thought at the time, was that I could choose to end my life without having to go through all the horrors of, AIDS. Thankfully, an individual that I shared that with said, "I'll help you. I'll take care of you. I'm moving to Quebec. My company's paying for the move. Put your things, the rest of your things in the truck, and I'll take care of you." So I did. I didn't want my family to see me get sick and die. I was a successful hairstylist. I didn't want my clients to find out that I was HIV positive. And so I moved from Kitchener-Waterloo to Ottawa, thinking that I was going to die. Months passed. My money ran out. I was still alive. And so I had to start all over again. I had to get a job, and it became a real situation where the fear had grabbed a hold of me, and I no longer was showing up for life. I was showing up for my fear. It wasn't until a woman came into my life, out of the blue, really. She came to the salon, she sat in my chair, and she said, "Hello, I'm here." And I said, "Hi." She said, "No, I'm here." I thought, that's kind of strange, but I like kind of goofy basically, so I didn't really react except to try to start doing her hair. And she said that I came here to tell you that you have suffered long enough and hard enough, and it's time to get on with your life. And I knew that was true. 4 years passed and I lived in that fear. And so I dated and wallpapered and perked up an apartment that didn't seem any reason to do that, before. And next thing I knew, I met someone and started a new relationship. Just prior to starting that relationship, I had started to take the first HIV medication, which was AZT. And the first 6 months there wasn't any side effects, but after that, all the different side effects started to happen. I had out-of-mind experiences, neuropathy, nausea, diarrhea, all kinds of things that actually made it look as though I was going to die. And this new relationship ended. I came home one day and he was gone. And again, I was living with a death threat and alone. I ended up one day shortly after in a food court in the mall, sitting at a table, crying. And I said to myself, I don't know what it is I have to do, but I have to find a way. I have to find a way to get through what it is that I perceive I might have to deal with. Because I wasn't dealing with it, and I felt that if the next thing that came along, was going to put me over the edge emotionally. So I knew I needed to do something. So I started to search. And I was lucky because I was infected with HIV a few years after HIV first showed up. And I knew people that were infected. I knew people that got sick. I knew people that died. But I knew people that didn't as well. And so I learned from them. I learned the nutritious foods that they were putting in their body. I learned of the supplements, the vitamins, the herbs, the botanicals. So I had been taking care of my body. I've been trying to heal my body physically. But I needed more than that. And I started to go to workshops. And the first one was the AIDS Mastery, and which was a course on living, for anyone affected or infected by HIV. It was an amazing workshop. I learned Reiki. I got involved and did craniosacral, body rebalancing, reflexology. I went to seminars on meditation and visualization. And all of those things, really, when I was looking to heal, physically, actually had an amazing effect on me physically. I physically started to feel well in my body, even though I had never been sick. I never had an opportunistic infection related to HIV. It was as though I was sick, just from my state of mind, my worry, my fear, prior to this. And so, really, I started a journey away from fear and really turned to love, recognizing that, I am a spirit, that spirit is love. Doesn't matter that I'm HIV infected. I had moved from that place where I wasn't, I started to tell a few people that I was HIV positive. And so I didn't feel as alone. This is really, wonderful for me actually to speak to you this evening, because a lot happened. In 1994, I came to Vancouver. So I really have a real sense of having found more places to heal mentally, emotionally, physically. I visited here in '94 and took workshops again, learned more things about how I could better prepare myself for whatever was going to happen. And it was here that I was on the Burrard Street Bridge prior to my time to go back home, looking out over the lookout on the bridge, and looking at the stars in the sky, and the freighters in the bay, and all the lights. And I just had a vision of all the people that I knew, that I admired, and the things that they were doing. And just in that moment, it came to me, well, the only difference between them and anybody else is they're doing it. So I said, well, when I get home to Ottawa, I'm going to contact the media and let them know that I'm HIV positive, almost a decade now, and still healthy. Lo and behold, to me, it was what they call AIDS Week, an awareness week of HIV and AIDS. And next thing I knew, I was in the newspapers and on television, and able to come out about being HIV positive. I hadn't told only a few people and my sister when I was first diagnosed. It was over 4 years before I told my brothers. I figured by then they wouldn't think that I was automatically going to die, because I could already say that, well, I've lived 4 years already, so don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. But having done that really caused a great freedom to come over me. I no longer had to worry about being HIV positive. So on World AIDS Day, 1994, I went on national television on the Jeannie Petty Show and came out about being HIV positive. From there, everything just kind of catapulted. And really, to this day, I have whenever my health is such that I can, I've volunteered to create HIV/AIDS awareness. And if I can say anything tonight, it would be that the abundance of life doesn't come from what one provides for oneself, but it is found in our connectedness. In all these years, I could never have done what turned out to be, the most wonderful experiences that I couldn't even have dreamt of, let alone seen me doing. It has given me the opportunity to share my story with other people and let people know that they don't have to assume that they're going to die. Now we think of HIV as being more like a chronic disease and not necessarily a death sentence. And there's much an individual can do, to take care of themselves. And hopefully they don't have to go through that kind of fear. And so actually, when I was on the Burrard Street Bridge, I said 3 things, if I can recall. I said, when I get home, I'm going to contact the media and avail myself as someone living with HIV. And I'm going to put together a pamphlet about alternative and complementary therapies, everything that I've learned from all the people that were HIV positive and all the people that I learned from that were facilitators, had workshops, the people that attended them, that educated me on all the many alternative and complementary therapies. And if I can, I'm going to move to Vancouver. And all of that and more has taken place. And in 2003, my 25-year-old nephew built a website. After 10 years of being an HIV/AIDS advocate, an advocate for active health, I had articles, documentaries, and news footage, all on all the different involvements that have taken place, that I've been a part of. And he put that together on a website, which I knew absolutely nothing about, technically. But that website was launched. It was a 20-page website, and it was launched in 2003. Google took a liking to me and the website, I guess, and it really, took off out on the internet. And by 2004, I learned to write HTML code and do graphics, and I took over the website. In May, I celebrated 7 million people have visited from 176 countries. And I am not just connected, to the people that I see and know. I am now connected to people all over the world. The site is now an internationally recognized HIV and AIDS information website, and I operate it from my bedroom computer. A lot of people think that it's an organization and contact me asking to come to my conferences and ask for funding, but the website was never designed to make money, so it's not about that. It's about putting the information out there, putting a face to HIV so people can know that just because they're infected with HIV, they don't have to think that they're going to die. And hopefully no one has to go through what I'm going through. But we know that around the world, people still don't have that kind of education. HIV taught me, I didn't have to show up for my fear. HIV taught me to show up for life, not my fear. HIV taught me that the abundance of life was the people that I was connected to. It gave me a consciousness too, that I wanted to be a part of a positive consciousness. And so I became positively positive in that, I knew that I could control the thoughts I had, that I didn't have to go to that place that was about fear. Thank you for
You did great. Thanks so much, Brad. Does anybody have any quick questions for Brad? So interested in talk and amazing your attitude. It's so fantastic. Anybody want? Yes, Ethan. PositivelyPositive.ca.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any quick questions? Why don't? Thanks so much, Brad. Wow. Fantastic. I really want to thank so much.